Good evening, and it is good to be back. Welcome back with us here for our Bible study, to our second to last Bible study of 2020.
One more to go after this.
I can't even believe that, how fast this year is going.
And not fast enough for some people, but
It's true.
This is it.
This is it.
Well, in case you haven't noticed, that's not Pastor Mike talking, but this is Minister Manny. Minister Manny, I believe that there was a bit of an introduction on Sunday. Big, grand, wonderful introduction.
Yeah, I'm always working behind the scenes, so I don't get to, But that introduction almost get me out of the control room to come out here, So I wasn't expecting that, but thank you very much. It was very kind.
Listen, we are so excited to have you. Before we get into that, we have just so many things going on. But listen, you, wherever you're viewing from, we encourage you to share this wherever you are. We truly believe that tonight is a special night. It's going to be a little bit different, a little more informal, a little more conversational, but this will be great. Before we do that, though, let's get you caught up on what's been going on. This is now week 4 in our Arrival series. So, Pastor Mike, we started. First of all, how are you?
Doing good.
Christmas shopping done?
Christmas shopping officially was finished at 3:35 this afternoon.
Is that when Amazon came?
No, that's when I got home from my last shopping trip. Had to get the wife's stocking stuff.
Oh, the wife's stocking stuff.
There you go.
Yeah.
Minister Manny, all good with Christmas shopping?
Well,
that says it all.
There's still 2021. You still got time.
I'm thankful for that Amazon company.
That's it.
And the Prime and all that. You could get things right away.
Isn't Amazon Greek for like angel?
Yeah.
Right? That works for me. But Pastor Mike, 4 weeks ago we started a series. We started this Arrival series. Can you try to kind of summarize, catch us up? Why Arrival? What's going on? What have we talked about?
Well, I mean, in simplest form, what we're looking at is that we're looking towards the arrival of the baby in the manger. We're looking towards the arrival of Jesus and recognizing that it wasn't just a baby in a manger, but it was everything that baby was all about. It was everything that came on that amazing evening. And arrival, we talk about, this word Advent, has historically been used in the church with this expectation of what's to come. And so in the traditional church, there's kind of 4 movements within the Advent series. So we started with hope, and then joy, peace, and then we started, the next movement of it is love, and we'll be talking about that tonight. And so it's recognizing that on that evening, mankind received the fullness in image of hope. We had the hope that was the prophets had spoken of for so long, that mankind could once again have the ability to have the connection with God personally that was broken in the garden. And then because of that hope and that promise, there's a joy that no matter what's going on around it, we're anchored in joy. And then is the recognition that even while there's hope, and while that hope fuels our joy, we're still in a broken world. And yet the peace of God, the shalom that Pastor Marco talked about, is God's presence coming in and into the broken places and making us whole and restoring us back to the promise of creation, that we would be one with Him. And so they all work together and bring us up to this moment.
Absolutely. So, Minister Manny, before we get into the conversation, I think the question we have is, can you give us a little background? I think again, you've been here for a while, right?
Yeah, I started. I want to say it was actually 2002, 2003. As a visiting KNET pastor, and soon after that, it was something that just sparked and kind of clicked You know, I had just finished studying and taking over the church that I grew up in, and that sent me out to prepare to become pastor of that church. And it was since when I came 2002, 2003, I remember it was Rising to a New Level. That was the
Oh my gosh, I
the,
remember
Holy
that
cow.
theme.
Rising to a New Level was something that really hit me hard, because there was no way to going back to keep doing what I was doing. You know, I was pastoring the church, and there was a moment that everything came to, as I came here, things started to flow in my mind, and things started to line up in a way that, you know, it was very overwhelming. But it goes back to, you know, before that, the one thing that I wanted to do was to be a director, a producer type of thing. When I studied that, did all my undergraduate work on that, and then I was faced with the call to ministry or going to ESPN.
Oh wow!
You know?
So ministry or money. Got it.
Yes, ministry or money, right? So, yeah. Then from there, I thought that, you know, God was just pulling me away from all the media and all the behind the scenes stuff and television and all that. But soon after I came here, it was only that I realized that God was using both. You know, the two things that I love, which was my God ministry and television production stuff, you know. So now I see purpose.
Yeah.
You know, I see purpose that because you need both. And but I realized that after I started then serving, as everybody else does. You know, I've been serving doing cassette duplications back there.
Oh
you
my
know.
gosh.
Then we
Cassette
upgraded.
duplication. The tape duplication ministry.
Oh.
Yes,
Wow.
tape duplication ministry. Then we updated to CDs.
Ooh.
You know.
Those are the things that look like frisbees if you're born, you know, in this
Yeah.
millennium. Yeah. Okay.
And the
Yeah.
ones before that were these little rectangle things, and the tape
Oh, from
would come
Guardians of
out,
the Galaxy.
and- yeah.
That's how the kids know him. From Guardians of the
Guardians
Galaxy.
of the Galaxy. That's right. Can you believe it? Like we've seen that change in our lifetimes. Like
so
we don't even
Yeah.
do CDs anymore.
So old.
Yeah, you get in there. So, you know, the realization of God's purpose in my life, in my family's, just came to be in the forefront. It was like, here it is, you know. And thank God I'm doing both things that I like the most. I enjoy it. I'm very passionate about it. You
Amen.
know, and I like what I'm doing back there. A lot of you don't know me. Hardly when I come out of there is to maybe greet people when they're walking out, or you know. But I have such a wonderful crew and of volunteers that it's just it warms my heart.
But if you want to talk about warms your heart, right? Because what I love is I'm hearing you talk about how you figured out how God was working now. Like you can look back and go,
Right.
wow, right? But I still remember when you first came on, because you literally brought your whole church here
Yes.
and said, this is now your pastors.
Correct.
And I remember that because I was a pastor back then.
Yes.
And I remember you bringing people, and I remember Johanny couldn't speak hardly a word of English, and you're now working in children's ministry, and it was watching her grow, which was amazing. And Johanny, you're still one of my favorites. And but I mean,
I
what
still
is it?
can't get it to get quiet, you know. Now I cannot stop. Now she talks.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, you did something so few pastors could ever do, right? You literally said, to be the best shepherd I can be, I need you to turn you over to a different shepherd.
Yeah.
And man, Manny, that is amazing, because to me, it almost sets the stage for where we're going tonight.
Right.
Because there's so many different areas where we could talk about love tonight. And we'll kind of get to that in a moment, but I just remember that. And I will always remember, you know, the memory for me will be going over when we were emptying your studio out, when Bishop had me come over and help fill the truck with all the stuff from your church. And I remember thinking, it's not big, but it's certainly functional.
Yeah.
And this man is literally laying down his church to come here. And I remember that was very humbling. And you have literally grown from there and impacted so many people's lives sitting in a booth.
Yeah. And it was a very hard thing to do. Because, you know, the last thing you want to do say is, you know, you're a pastor, you're closing your church. No. We are tapping into one of the speakers that came here that talked about tapping into the pipe, where I just tapped my mic.
Yeah, you did. You tapped it
I
3
did my
times.
own.
Yeah.
Broke my own rule. Okay.
We get yelled at. Okay, we get yelled at when we tap our mic. I already got the unzip your jacket, Pastor Mike, you know.
That's what he was saying, that you typically, when you see him come out of the booth, it's because something's not right.
So tapping into that pipe that where the blessing flow.
Yeah.
And
source, right.
the source, right? Parent was his name. I don't remember. So when that happened, it meant that, you know, we need to rise to a new level.
Yeah.
All right, and it was hard to do because closing a church or getting out of the pastoral ministry, you know, could be seen as something of a failure.
Right.
You know, and I wrestled with that a lot. But it wasn't until I actually had a long conversation with Bishop on a Saturday, like for 4 hours, that he actually was able to minister to me. And a burden was lifted right there. And then that Sunday, that's when in the church we decided to actually merge the church here to have, I believe it was 2 more services over there, and then we were going to come and start meeting over here. And when I informed Bishop of what we have done, he told me, what? Yeah, but the church unanimously -1 was in agreement for us to merge here. And I understand why the one did not want to.
Yeah.
It was one of the founders.
Yeah.
You know, I could understand that. You know, there's a lot of history with that person. A nice history. But God was not just closing something. He was actually elevating something.
Yeah.
And I realized that after a while. You know, Bishop asked me, well, what do you want to do? You want to come pastor here? I said, no, I just want to sit down and I want to heal. Because it was a very hard thing that we went through.
Yeah.
But thank God, here we are.
You know, Minister Manny, typically before we get into our conversation, we'd ask you, you know, about, hey, your Christmas traditions. And the truth of the matter is, I want to know about those, but I think it's set up too well to move into tonight's conversation.
Okay.
And I think at the end we can come back and we can revisit that.
Yeah.
But you know, Minister Manny, one thing that you said, even in this story, where you took a church where you were a pastor, where you grew up, so a church where you had history. You took the people that you loved, that you served, that you sacrificed, volunteered, all those things for, and you decided that the best way to love them was to make this move that wasn't easy, but a move that was necessary.
Absolutely.
And so now we look at this from a personal note. And so, Minister Manny, we just found out who Minister Manny is, the minister. But can you tell us a little bit about your family? Who is Minister Manny, the husband and the father?
Minister Manny, the husband and the father, is when I go home, I enter to that door and I get greeted very,
Vigorously.
vigorously.
Robust.
You know.
Robustly.
And lately, even more with my daughter Jacqueline. She could tell my voice from my wife's voice. I'm sorry, honey. But when I get home, she just lights up and starts, daddy, daddy, daddy. And when Mama gets home, she said, Mom? Okay.
See, Gina,
So-
it's not just our kids.
So, no, I try to, in all seriousness, I try to model what I have learned through the years in here and at home.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's very tough because society and the kids going to school and, all the, everything that they're getting exposed to tells them otherwise. We're trying to raise a family in Christian values when the world is telling you, no, that's old school, you don't do that, you do your own thing, and here we go. But I always try to model that in my home. With my children, always been the role of almost like a teacher. I always wanted to teach them how to do better than me and be able to excel and to be able to understand, to make them think. Because one thing that they are not doing right now, many of our kids that go to school, is they don't know how to think. Yeah. We got to teach kids how to think. Yeah, how you teach them how to think? Asking them questions and just going around. So I try to do that. My mission in life is that my kids will be able to remember that and to be able to apply that and be able to have a successful life.
So can you just remind, or maybe even for the first time, can you introduce us to your family? So how many children do you have and how old are they?
So I got 5 children. The oldest, Jose. The second one, Joshua. Then we have Jaden, and we have Jacqueline. Did I say 5?
You said 5.
It's 4.
I was like, 5? There's something I don't know?
Well, my wife is part of that,
She's one of your children.
generation
She's
there.
part of that generation.
Yes, she's my second daughter.
Well,
I'm gonna get something.
So I think.
Let's help you dig out of that one.
Yeah. Let me. What I hear you saying is that you have 4 children, but I don't think it's a Freudian slip that you said 5. Minister Manny, one thing that we know, and one of the reasons why you're here today, is because your home is not conventional. This is a very unique home and a very strategic and intentional home. And so, Minister Manny, it's my understanding that from 2002, 2003, that you've actually been a foster parent, you and Johanny.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what we want to kind of focus on. When we think about love, Pastor Mike, if you can help us out, love is one of those things that almost has lost its meaning because we've said it so often, right? I love pizza, I love the Cowboys, oh yeah, I love my wife, right? Like it's all the same. What, if you were to use tonight, and we defined it so we're speaking the same way, how could we agree on a definition for tonight for love?
Well, it's really hard to say let's define love, right? Because love breaks down into so many different categories. Because we can legitimately say, I love, right? I love my friends, right? So we have a phileo, we have our friends love. The storge, I love my family. I'd do anything for them. Eros, I love my wife in ways that no one else gets to, and there's something about it that we fulfill one another. And so there's these different loves. But at the end of the day, there's this other love. It's called agape. And agape love is this understanding at its essence that the other loves, while important and necessary in a gift, are all receiving loves. They're all about what I get. I feel love for my family. I feel love for my friends. I feel the love with my wife. Agape says, I give you everything. Agape is the divine love, and it's this love that says, all that I am, I have, and all that I have, I give to you. So in the marriage covenant, that is the vow. I give to you forever. But when we look at this understanding of love and we recognize that there's this agape, and the scripture is full of that, right? And we talked about this so eloquently, so often, especially if we go back a few months. And we talked about, especially when we talked to the scriptures, about how Jesus says, love your enemies. He's not saying, feel like friends with them. He's not saying, feel like family with them. He's saying, no matter how you feel about them, you give them all that I have. All the love that I've given you, you now give to them. So if we were to take a definition of love, in essence, I would want to define the agape love, because that's the divine love that ultimately trumps them all. It's what we're called to live out of. And in essence, it is the willingness to give of myself for the betterment of others unconditionally.
To give to myself for the benefit of others. So if I can paint the picture a little bit, you were saying that your son Joshua was born in 2002, and almost immediately your doors are open and you receive a foster child.
Yeah, it was quite a process. It was something that we were not thinking of doing. A cousin of mine, which was also a member of my church, worked for DCF. And she talked to me and Johanny about the need of foster parents. You know, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't even know that existed.
Oh, wow.
You know, like in Connecticut, nothing. But once I learned about it, Johanny and I talked about, well, let's see what we can do. You know, and it was more like an extension of our ministry, more than anything else. But once we started taking the classes for licensing classes, really came to the realization of what a huge need was here in Connecticut, right around us. You know, that we could potentially affect the life, you know. So our first thing was, well, let's take the classes. We were licensed, and as far as the licensing, you know, they ask you, you know, what are the type of, you know, what ages of children do you want to foster? And Johanny and I were thinking, well, let's try from, you know, infant to 5-year-old, because those are the ones that you could actually start putting foundation and helping develop and really need a good foundation, you know.
And especially with an infant in the house.
Yes. And the last thing we wanted was to actually have like teenagers, because there is a difference, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Small child, you could help and you could start guiding them from the beginning. A teenager comes already with a lot of things on them, a lot of baggage, we could say that then it's kind of hard to start turning that around. It's not impossible, because we got everything is possible, but you know, we didn't want to have that first experience like that. The first call we got, a teenager. A teenager with a baby.
Wow, with a baby.
With a baby. 13 years old, that was crossed the border, and found herself pregnant with child, and as soon as they started telling me the story, it was something. It's like you cannot let go. There was one of my teacher once preached this sermon on the Samaritan. The Samaritan man that found the guy that was in the floor and actually helped the person. But it was one thing that he said that struck me. That was that depending on what your heart have, you're able to see the need, and God kind of puts you in a position because you saw the need to fulfill that need. Okay, and that was something that stayed with me for even today, and once I heard the story of that young lady, we just couldn't say no. So we received her in our home, and she had a newborn. Joshua was already crawling around, and they just started growing together. She stayed with us until she turned 18.
So 5 years.
Yes, and then
Which means her baby
grew
was
with-
5.
She grew up with
So
my
you-
son, Joshua,
So it was like almost like
You
you were
had
almost
twins and a
parent
13-year-old.
and grandparent at the same time.
at the same time.
Wow.
And it was again, adoption wasn't in my radar. It wasn't anything like that. It was like I started getting sick and had a lot of medical things that were going on, and it came to a point that we couldn't procreate. And we started, but all this is happening, we didn't know. We started fostering, and we wanted it to impact kids' life, but it wasn't in our radar to adopt kids. But once, the first one that came in was 16 days old, came to my home. He had we were his parents. And when he came to 2 years old, the opportunity of adoption was posed to us. And knowing what our history had been, we wanted to adopt him because he was the first baby that we had from birth that stayed in my home for that long period of time. And if we were to say no, then his first trauma would have been leaving us, because he knew us as his parents. The first trauma would be the separation of him from us, which is not only a trauma for him, but for us too.
Of course.
Because it's very hard to love people that you love, that are in your home, that are growing up, that you want to help and all that, and then all of a sudden they get pulled away. So that's very difficult. And at the same time, you warn when you go to foster care, you warn that you need to try not to create bonds with kids. You're like a passing by situation. But that is hard. How could you tell somebody not to form bonds with people? So every time a child came to our home, we always had a loss. After they left, it was like a loss. It was a separation. And we had to deal with that. And if it wasn't because of God and the way that He ministered to us and our family and the different ages, growing up, it would have been very difficult.
Minister Manny, I think there's so much that you said, and there's so much that I want to ask about, but just for context, about how many children have you fostered? Even including right now, your son and your daughter, Jaden and Jackie. How many different children were in your house, would you imagine?
I'm thinking that it was around 38 kids
38?
that went through my home.
So I wasn't ready for that. I thought like 8 was the answer, and that was a lot. Okay.
Wow.
So you just said the reason you came into foster care was because your cousin recognized there was a need and you can be trusted. You responded not because it was a burning desire, but really out of ministry. Like, I'm
Right.
the pastor. She
Right.
came to the pastor. I'll do the right thing, no problem.
Right.
You get involved. You say, sure, I'll do it, except I'm not going to do a teenager. Well, great. We'll give you a baby who comes with the teenage
comes with a
mother.
teenager.
Right. So
Yes.
here's the baby. Oh, and her teenage mother.
Yeah, because
So-
that's the way God works.
So now you have that. You're watching basically twins because you have your own newborn. You got this, you got this other newborn. You have this 13-year-old. In 5 years, she ages out of the system. This 5-year-old who is a sibling to your son now, not to mention the 13-year-old, or who's 18 now, but they leave. And you said that every loss, even if it's positive, even if there's reconciliation with
Right,
the family,
right.
but every loss is a loss.
Right.
Minister Manny, how do you get past the first one? Why is it there? How is it that you go, okay, listen, I got into it. I did my duty for my cousin. I did my duty by my church. I was the example, but I can't do this again. I can't do it again.
Yeah.
How do you find it in yourself to become vulnerable, not just with you, but to bring your entire family along?
I think that, again, going back to when you see a need, I think God is able to provide to fulfill that need. And that's what happened after we actually started doing it. You learn things in life, and you go around and you learn things, but you might learn things right now, but then down the road is when you actually kind of clicks or you realize.
You mean like taking an undergrad production class?
Yes.
And then, okay.
And then clicking
Here we
here.
go.
Yes. So, it clicks because if we're talking about love, we're celebrating the birth of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, which was the fulfillment of God's promise. As soon as creation happened, and that the fall and Adam and Eve, and He already said there's going to be one.
That's right.
So God shows His love first to us. He loves us first. He didn't have to create us. But when you are God and you're dealing with love, the agape love, that love needs to be invested. It needs to be passed on. It has to be given. So here He is, created man and woman. They fall. God is promising a Savior. He didn't do it out of coincidence. He did it because that was the only way He could demonstrate what the real agape love is. He was already looking at that agape love being fulfilled. And you talk about the Sturgis and the Eros and Phileo, and those are natural love that we all understand. But the love that comes from God, agape love, the one that He already showed us that by redeeming His people. by wanting to reconcile, his people back with him. So the best way of describing this and the best way of realizing how it happened was when the promise was fulfilled. When that little baby, we call it a little baby, when God decided to come, and born, it was the highest love expression that God could ever show humanity. So what do we do with agape? What do we do with love? You cannot keep it to yourself. You got to give it out. You got to pass it on. And that's exactly what God did from the beginning. He didn't have to create us, but he did, and made a way to give his love and show us how to reciprocate that love back to him. And I think that the most important thing that we could learn is that love, is embodied in Jesus. And all the way to the cross.
Through the cross, right?
All the way there. It was love.
That's right.
And even at the garden where he was tested,
That's right.
he had to fulfill that agape promise. Yeah. And by doing that, it opens up a way for restoration of the people to God, the people with God. And we as Christians are called to pass that agape love to others. Yeah. It is hard. Yeah. Because sometimes you want to wring some people's necks. You can't do that. You have to love them. And I think that the greatest sacrifice of love was when Jesus went to the cross and actually fulfilled the promise of redeeming us and offering eternal life to us. Like 1 Peter talks about the hope of.
That's right.
So, bring me back.
So, well, Pastor Mike, we had said while we were preparing, we had talked about in England. It's interesting, right? Because in England, they don't use the Greek terms like you said, but they use this term charity, and it means love, but it also has another meaning, a meaning that we use kind of in the everyday, right? So charity is always an action. There's always something to be done, right? And I guess my question then is, how do you see that is one way that we look at it? Do you see, if we use that term charity, it never stands by itself. It's always kind of defined along with something, right? You're charitable because you've done something. Right. So if you can just speak to that for a minute.
Well, I mean, I think, charity, how many times you heard, well, I don't want your charity. Right. Right. And so it can be termed, it can be looked at wrong. So sometimes charity is, especially we look at the holidays, right? We look at, charitable giving and that's actually what it's called. Tax returns, right? Charitable giving. Oh, okay. If I get it, and that's it right there, right? Okay, I'm going to increase my charitable giving. Organizations, they get down to the last quarter, whatever. Oh, you know what? Let's figure out where we're going to give to charity. But are they really giving to charity in a sense? Are they doing it for the altruistic, the benefit of the organization, or is it, hey, listen, it's a win-win. You need something, I need something. I give you money, I get to take it off on my taxes, right? Charity in its sense, and I love when you look at the King James version of 1 Corinthians, he doesn't say, in all the others says, love is patient, love is kind. In King James, it's charity is patient, charity is kind. Now abideth these three, faith, hope, and charity. But the greatest of these is charity. And the reason for it is because charity, when we look at that word, it's an outflow. It's a giving. It's evidence. It's an evidence, exactly. It's a good way to put it. It's an evidence of the condition of my heart. And so if I'm looking at it, if I'm going to give charitably, I have to look at the condition of my heart and say that to truly give agape, it is absolutely not about me. I am not giving this to you with expectation of anything in return, not even a pat on the back. Matter of fact, if you spit in my face, I've still done this as unto the Lord. And that's why, we talk about that. And I love how you brought the concept of Jesus and the sacrifice, because that's, how many times do we use this scripture on Wednesday nights? In Hebrews, Hebrews chapter 4.
Oh.
Jesus, for the joy set before him, endured the shame of the cross. What was the joy? Well, it certainly wasn't the cross, but it was the joy of knowing that we would be free. So the only thing he was getting out of it was joy at knowing we would be free, and that was enough for him to die for us. And now he's saying to us, take up your cross and follow me, right? So that's why when I turn around and I look and I go, man, Minister Manny, you open up your house, you have your heart shredded. I mean, I remember, certainly one, time in particular, 2 little girls that you took, because they got into all of our hearts.
Yeah.
And you'd bring them to church. And I remember when I was children's pastor back then, and every week going and watching their speech develop. They had no speech. And then watching them develop. They came in and they were like little wildlings in the classroom. It was crazy. And then watching how loving and the environment of your home. And I remember there was a hope that you would get to adopt them, but then it didn't happen. And I remember how my heart was torn. And I remember saying,
Yes.
I could never do this.
Yeah.
How is it that you and your wife, as a couple, have continued? I mean, Johanni's not here to be able to speak for herself because she's home watching the kids, right? How has that been? What's that been like, making that charitable choice for these kids, and how do you recover from that and to keep doing it?
Yeah. Again, is
I guess, what is the joy set before you in doing this?
What I see is, if we are able to invest in a life and be able to help that life walk through and come to God, I think that's the ultimate goal. I'm not, I'm not one of being, I don't like to be boasting about things or anything like that. It's those 2 girls were with me 5 years, okay? And then at the 5-year mark, they reunited with the parents, with the mom. And that was hard. But I know that all that time that they were in my home, they were given something that they could hold down to. At least that's what here we go again. At least that's what I think and I hope, and pray for. That all these children that we've been able to touch will be able to continue the search for God and continue to foster that. Again, doing foster care is not easy. There are horrible stories about people that are doing foster care that have actually, damaged children that they're supposed to be caring for. This is not easy. We just finally actually stopped, put our licensing on hold after we adopted Jackie. And we did it because it was time. System have changed a lot. Priorities have changed a lot as far as the government goes. And the fundamental idea of what this agency was doing was to be able to care and protect a child, no matter what age. When you start going, left and right from that, putting in jeopardy the actual being that you're supposed to be protecting, that is troublesome. And you speak up. We advocate, we've gone to meetings, we've done all that. Everything behind the scenes. We don't publicize this stuff. A lot of the stuff that we do, that my family does, we don't publicize. But it is because we believe in God.
Yeah.
We believe a promise. And He has not departed from sustaining us. He has always taken care of us. And I think that in this way that we've been impacting kids' lives, it's only one way. The natural thing to do, the natural love says, oh, you took care of that. What is that? It's very different to say, can you put the agape love in practice? Because that's the one that is difficult, but it's the one that is able to make change and create change. And once it's like, you're sharing the gospel with someone. It's an act of love. Now that person has an opportunity to getting
Respond to it,
or not.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's natural for them to fight, to go opposite from what God wants. But when the agape love is involved, and a person is able to understand that, that's when the connection happens.
Minister Manny, one thing that I hear from you, and I think we're gonna start kind of wrapping it, but one of the things that I hear from you is that in all of this, you were so convinced that you are agape loved by God, that the truth is we've asked you the same question twice, and you still haven't answered it. And I know, but it's not that you're skirting it. But I think it's telling. We're asking, Minister Manny, how do you protect your heart? And you're saying you don't.
You don't. That's the
You
beautiful
love.
thing.
The revelation of how much that I am loved is why my reflection is so tangible. And so, Minister Manny, it is easy in this moment, right, to immediately look at everybody who's out here and going, well, I haven't had 38 kids in my house. I haven't showed anything. Before we get into the what, my question is, if you were going to encourage somebody tonight, how could they discover that revelation that you have of that agape love that God has for them?
When you realize that what God has promised, and you're able to believe that and act in faith towards that, it's a done deal. It's done.
Yeah.
And you cannot then withhold that agape love.
Yeah.
Because once you have come into a relationship with Christ, a relationship with God, with Jesus, with His Holy Spirit, there is no way that you're going to withhold that. I lost what I was trying to say. I'm tired. I've been editing.
And we'll get to that too. But Pastor Mike, if there was some parting words tonight when we think about love, I think so often, I think, again, we look at it in one way, and I think, Minister Manny, you've been such a great example. But Pastor Mike, what about this agape love? How do we make it practical?
Yeah. Well, how do we How do we make it practical? I mean, that's as broad as it can go. But I want to pick up on one thing that I heard Minister Manny say. Because you said that when I understand God's love for me, if I truly understand it properly, I have no choice but then to react. Not because, okay, I have to choice. It's just, it becomes the reaction.
It is the reaction. It should be the response.
It is the response, right? But you said something else in there, because here we are talking in this context of foster care, but you said something else about sharing the love of God. And it's funny because I think that so often, here's a practical piece, right? We think about, okay, love is going to be, okay, I got to go give somebody money because they don't have it. I've got to go take time out of my schedule, or I've got to do this magnanimous thing. But sometimes I think we can get so good about charitable works. Listen, going out, we've been doing these food distributions. It feels wonderful. It's awesome. It's wonderful that you're meeting a need, right? But what about the willingness to share the gospel? Yes, I've practically done something for you, but now here's the why. And I think, many times as Christians, agape love is putting your fear aside, putting your, I don't know what I'm going to say, or what if they don't like to hear the message of the cross? What if they don't want to hear about what it means to be a Christian? What if they don't want to hear about Jesus? But if I love you enough, and if I believe that Jesus is the only way that I'm going to find hope, identity, eternal life, belonging, then agape love is, I really don't care what you think about what I'm about to tell you. I'm going to give you life. And I think, man, that's huge, because that now is parenting. How do I parent my kids from the perspective of agape love? How do I parent my kids purely for their growth versus them making me feel good or me look good, right? It's this gospel response. When I realize what he's done for me, I have no other, it just becomes the automatic alternative. And so anytime I fall short of that, then that becomes my checks and balance for, am I operating out of what's good for me, what makes me feel good,
right,
or am I operating out of what is good for the kingdom of God, of saying, man, these people around me are broken. Am I loving my enemy to eliminate conflict, or am I loving my enemy because they need Jesus? Mm-hmm. And I think that in this season, if we're talking about the arrival of hope, we get to be those who help with the arrival of hope for those who have none. But it's going to take agape. It's going to take us being willing to sit back and say, you know what? Whether they're going to receive it or not, I want to tell them about the love of Jesus, how he's impacted my life, and how he can impact yours. And I think, it has been, I've had 3 amazing moments in my life. I mean, I've had a lot of amazing moments, but I've had these 3 special moments in my life where I got to stand in the courtroom with you guys as you went through 3 adoption processes. And it was when you signed on that line, because it was like a marriage vow. And I wish everybody could be there and see what this is, because the court is saying, are you willing to take these kids as your own, to make them your family?
Right.
And I watched you do that. And it became a picture, it has always now become a picture for me of what God does to us. In spite of our histories, in spite of our mess, not for any of his own good, but for our good, he makes us one. And that's just been, that's why I personally wanted you on here tonight. Because for me, Minister Manny, your life has so epitomized agape. And I'm proud to be a brother, really.
As we wind down right here, week 4, and we've kind of walked through this thing, right? We said that, hope isn't a wish. And we said that joy isn't happiness. And then we said that peace isn't the absence of conflict. And so today we said love it's not a feeling. If we continue to treat love as a feeling, as a reaction to the hormones, as a reaction to the environment, as a strong desire to want to do something, then I would imagine, whether it be Minister Manny and 38 kids and us, wherever we are, that we don't always want to love. We don't always feel it to love. But if there's anything I heard today, I heard of a constant decision to be open and to be cognizant and to be recognizing that God continues to love me. Even when maybe I'm not warranted of his love, when I don't deserve it, when I'm at my lowest, like wherever you are, it is impossible for God to love you more than he loves you right now. Now you have to receive that, not because we've said it, not because I share it, but because that's your revelation. And so before we ask you to do a charitable thing, to go out and to take this message and to go and reproduce it somewhere, what we're saying right now in this moment, in this season, in this Christmas season, can you receive God's love for you? Can you recognize that you've always been at the forefront of his mind? You've never been an afterthought. Even when you were lonely, I heard one person say that when you felt lonely, it was simply that God was calling you back to him. And so tonight, as we get ready to transition, I just want to encourage you to allow yourself to be loved perfectly and completely. So in that way, like Minister Manny said, your response is one that reflects what you've already received. So, gentlemen, Minister Manny, thank you so much for coming tonight. We have a few announcements. One of them that is near and dear to your heart. That'll be our second one. But we do have a few things going on here. We are teaming back up with CT Praise.
Yes.
So CT Praise is the fourth Monday,
Praise, yes.
the fourth Monday of the month. All of Connecticut, there's an organization called CT Praise. All of Connecticut comes out. And you sign up for a 30-minute slot, and the goal is to get Connecticut praying. Pray about our country. Pray about issues. Thank God. How about that? We don't do enough of just thanking God, right? It's always
we're always begging God to
you,
change things, as
right.
opposed to thanking him for what we actually
Right?
have. My gosh.
So if you want to be a part of that, you can go right to our website. You can sign up. Click the link, and you can sign up, and you can be a part of that. And I cannot believe that we are 23 and a half hours away.
Thank you for reminding me.
No problem at all. For our very first premiere debut of The Hope of Christmas. Minister Manny, what is that? What is The Hope of Christmas that we are waiting for at 8 o'clock tomorrow?
Well, it is a collaboration of many people that took an idea and brought it to life to make sure that people at home and that had an opportunity to have something that they could watch, they could meditate, they could hear word, they could hear singing, they could hear children, they could hear, all types of things, and be able to bless somebody. So if anything is to make sure that you tell people to watch it. It has been a lot of work.
Labor of love.
Labor of love. All enjoyable. Because when you're passionate about something,
That's it.
you do it.
I'm a Cowboy fan. I
But
get
you
it.
know how many things have happened to try to stop this from happening. I had people that were scheduled to be camera people that got broken legs. I got one that got COVID quarantine, one that got plastic surgery. It's been quite an ordeal. I had to quarantine myself twice. Never mind everybody else. So what's behind this is the victory.
That's it.
Come on.
Of Jesus.
Come
the
on.
victory of love, the victory of God with us.
That's it.
Emmanuel. So tomorrow, sit down with your family and watch it.
So tomorrow, 8 o'clock, you can watch it on our YouTube page. You can watch it on our Facebook. But I do think probably most enjoyably, you can watch it on our app or our website.
Yes.
8 o'clock. Once it's up, it'll run from 8 o'clock. And then after that, it's on demand on any one of those sites. So you can watch it. Hey, when you get a hankering for Christmas in July, you can go right back. You can watch it again. It will never be out of date. And it is a fantastic gift, right? One size fits all.
That's right.
Best kind of gift we can have. Speaking of gifts and giving, Pastor Mike, it is time to do our offering.
Yeah.
Any words for our people?
You know, honestly, I was just, we had an opportunity the other day to just start categorizing all the things that we've accomplished.
Oh, man.
And it was amazing that in a moment where there's so much shutdown, right? And finances have dropped dramatically. What we've been able to do. I mean, we were able to finally open our cancer care ministry, and half of the folks, the fighters and families that get resources from our cancer care ministry, they don't even go to our church. Many of them aren't even Christians, but they find comfort in prayer and love at our cancer care ministry. So we were able to open that. We had, we extended ourselves to, one of the local medical companies, medical resources to do COVID testing. So anybody could come in for free COVID testing. And we've done so many.
Thousands in scholarships.
With thousands of dollars in scholarships. And I actually had the opportunity, I was asked by Milford Chamber of Commerce to come down because Kingdom Life, maybe you don't know this, but every year, Kingdom Life gives $1,000 to the Milford Chamber of Commerce for them to select one outstanding student from Milford to get that scholarship. So we were able to continue doing that. Man, the blood drives, right? So we did 2003 to 2011, we did, we got together, I think it was 655
like that.
pints of blood in that 8 years. The next 8 years, we stepped up from 655 to 660.
There you go.
Okay? This year, 2020, we've done 18 blood drives. We normally do one, maybe two a year.
Maybe two.
We've done 738 pints of blood just this year. Now, here's the interesting thing, because the Red Cross says 1 pint has the potential to save 3 lives. So if you do the math on it, it's 2,200 people potentially lives were saved. And we already have 8 more blood drives lined up just through into March. That's amazing. All when we're shut down. Farmers to Families, we've now distributed 130,000 pounds of food to families. 65 tons of food. That's how many elephants? I mean,
10. I don't know.
I don't know. That's
Jackie?
yeah, Jackie. She would know. But all of that at a time when things have shrunk down. We've connected with churches in our area more meaningfully than we've done in such a long period of time, in real practical ways to reach out to the community. How does all that happen? It's because we've had people that have remained faithful in their giving all year long. And I just want to say thank you. For those of you who have continued to put your support in, it's not just about you. Yeah, there's a covenant aspect of giving, of saying, God, I'm going to give, but I'm doing this not because I'm getting anything back, but because I have the opportunity, the agape reason for giving, right? And so listen, tonight we're closing out. This is one of our last giving opportunities for this year. I'm going to encourage you, go to our app giving channel, go to the links in the chat room there, and have that opportunity to say, you know what, I'm going to give because it's all about how do we keep reaching those who are lost around us with the hope of Jesus Christ, with practical aspects from food and whatever, and also the spiritual principles which bring change to their life. So I'm just going to encourage you, click in that link and give. Let's go out at 2020 with a bang. Where the enemy wanted to squash us,
That's right.
Let's go out with a bang.
That's right.
That is right. Now, I know you've been waiting because I said an hour ago that we would finally get to your Christmas tradition.
My Christmas tradition, okay? Oh, you want me to talk
Yeah,
about it?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, they know ours.
My Christmas tradition is simple.
I don't think that's true.
No, it is very interesting. I was born in Puerto Rico, and
That's not. I thought that accent was more Norwich, not Connecticut.
you know,
Interesting.
something. Yeah. Anyway, the Christmas tradition in Puerto Rico is very different, and not just with the festivities and all that, but it's a very special time. People do celebrate, and people do put lights and do amazing things. And there's always the tradition of the singing the old
Christmas
songs,
carols, yeah.
Christmas carols and stuff. And we put a little bit of flavor to it, you know. We take our
Little
guiro.
adobo on that.
Hello, el guiro, la maraca, la conga, la trompeta, todas esas cosas. All those things, the conga, the maracas, the trumpets, and we carol, you know, until very late in the morning. And then when I came here to the U.S., it was very sad. It was sad. Again, I became a Christian here. But when I came here and I experienced it, wow, it's different.
Well, let's not forget, it's
But-
probably 80 degrees in Puerto Rico at Christmas,
Well,
and it's
yeah.
probably like 25 degrees.
Yeah, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, you could,
Yeah, you'll get a
having
ticket.
good time. Anyway, but no, I'm very, I like the music. I like the orchestras. I always make it a point at home to watch one of those old recordings
Miracle
that
on
I have.
34th Street, or yeah.
Girls,
Yeah.
are you listening? Are you listening? Miracle on 34th Street.
Miracle on 34th Street.
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. It's beautiful. That's a beautiful one. But like Christmas concert from my island and things like that, I always try to play it and have my family around so they could watch and see something else. Back then, what you heard being sang had meaning. Right now, the music has taken a whole other meaning, and unless you're listening to Christian music all the time, what you're hearing out there is not. Okay.
It's Christmas pop.
So back then, music had meaning, had something to teach, had something to. So I try to, every year, you know, we gather around, we watch some of these things, we listen to the traditional music, Puerto Rico. And this morning, you know, I was warned to make sure that I go to the store and get our pernil, the, you know, pork leg, because that's one of the things that we gather, we eat, we do all these things. So I actually went, Johanny, I got the pork. It's in the fridge there. You'll find it. We didn't run out like last year. So, but no, we just, it is a beautiful time. And what makes it more beautiful is always the reminding us that God did love us first, and He provided a way to come back to Him. And I think that's the greatest, you know, that's the greatest gift. And everything else just springs out of it, you know. When you have love, everything else springs out of it.
That's right. You know, before we go, I have to ask the question that everybody's wondering. So in Puerto Rico, when you're singing these songs with meaning, and you got the dun 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 dun, I have to know. Do you sing "Let It Snow" in Puerto Rico, or do you dream of a white Christmas?
Well, let me tell you, we only got a part of the concert that had some tradition from here.
Oh, okay.
But there was a very famous mayor in Puerto Rico. Her name, Felisa Rincón de Gautier. When she was mayor in San Juan, this was many years ago. I mean, this story was told to me, and it was a true story. She wanted the kids in San Juan that year to experience what snow was. So she actually brought snow
Stop it.
to Puerto Rico, okay, so that kids that day would have a white Christmas in San Juan. She did that.
That's nuts.
She did that. I don't know how she did it, but she did
That's
it.
incredible.
So, you know,
So with love, everything's possible.
yes.
Minister Manny, thank you so much. I truly,
Fantastic.
not only do we have a good time, but honestly, we know how much you're doing. And truly, when I say that, thank you. Like 2020 at Kingdom Life does not happen without you.
Yeah.
You are the catalyst. We may have the ideas. We may be, as you like to say, and I love to hear, the talent. Love that. But you have been, you've been a rock. You've been consistent, and you've duplicated yourself. You've trained up Erica. You've trained up Stacy. You've trained up so many others.
Shout out to those volunteers back there.
That's right.
Stacy, Erica,
Liz,
Monique.
Liz,
Andrea.
Andrea. At
It's
the
just
camera,
so many. And
Deborah.
you have been just phenomenal. And so truly, we say it, but to say it now to your face and to embarrass you a little bit, I just love it. So thank you for everything you've done this year. Truly.
Thank you.
And family, have a Merry Christmas.
Have a wonderful Christmas. It's been a wonderful year. Come back next Wednesday. Pastor Marco will be joining us, and
Last
we'll be
one of the
recapping what 2020 means, and really looking forward with hope. So thanks for joining with us tonight. God bless you. Have a wonderful evening.
Love you.